I'm Al Yang. I'm the project lead here at Bigpoint. We are based in Hamburg, Germany. I am the project lead on Shards of War, which is a top-down shooter MOBA. For those of you guys who know what a MOBA is, it's called a multiplayer online battle arena. It's kind of a fast-paced PvP game. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about how great ideas don't always make great games. The outline for this basically is going to be three main topics. First one is design divergence, which is basically retaining your player expectations. Now, these are all more general ideas, but I'm going to give you some concrete examples and some kind of more general examples to kind of let you understand what I'm trying to get to. The next thing is my personal favorite. It's called the everything pizza. This is basically, does a positive thing and a positive thing also make a positive thing? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Let's talk about it. And then complexity, just because. Sometimes does more equal better? Actually, you'd kind of be surprised at the answer here. But let's start here. So the first thing we want to talk about here is design divergence. Or the example I like to bring is a cheeseburger with bacon. Why a cheeseburger with bacon? This is basically about straying too far from your comfort zone. So for those of you guys have probably noticed that I kind of like to eat. Food is pretty delicious. Eating is my hobby. I couldn't live without it. No? Okay. So, cheeseburger. Cheeseburger is a pretty delicious thing. I think most people say it's pretty decent. I was like, hey, you want to try something new? How about cheeseburger with bacon? People will basically go, yeah, sure, that sounds good. I like cheeseburgers. Might as well try something with a little bit extra, but it's still a cheeseburger. It's still very recognizable what it is, what I'm trying to eat here. Maybe try some fried chicken. You'd be like, well, I like burgers. Maybe I don't like chicken as much. It's a little too far from what I'm used to. They'll try something like this, which is like this monster of a burger with onions and, like 2 patties. But to them, it's still recognizable. The form factor, the core design, the core focus is still recognizable. Maybe you want to get them to shift something, maybe try a chicken burger. At least the core design is recognizable, but there's something a little bit different. You're trying to get them to shift somewhere a little bit different. Now, what does this go into? This goes into basically expectations for your players in games. How many of you guys have played or seen Resident Evil 5? Raise your hands, please. Okay, quite a few people there. Now, pretty fun game. However, is it a horror game? Resident Evil traditionally has been a horror game. Is it an action game? Resident Evil hasn't really been, but there's 2 players, there's a lot of run and gun action. What type of game is it really? Players come into this kind of game, when you look at Resident Evil, you expect a horror game. What are you getting out of here? Well, it did win an award for the best action game of 2009 from IGN, so maybe that's telling you something. But then this is breaking your player expectations. Maybe when people are coming in, hey, I'm looking for a horror game, but I'm getting an action game instead. And this is going to lead to a lot of criticism. And they went down the same path of Resident Evil 6, and you can kind of see the results there. On the other hand, if you look at a game from NIS America, this Printy game, 2D side-scrolling action game, really, really weird humor. It is crazy hard. Dialogue is just kind of offbeat, totally irreverent. Kind of makes no sense half the time. Kind of dirty. But when you look at it, you're like, well, is this game weird? Is this game wrong? No, because this is what the player absolutely expects from this type of game. It's not about building something that everybody is going to enjoy. You really need to find your core audience, see what they expect, and build for them. Don't try to please everybody, because if you try to please everybody, you're not going to please anybody. Another example for you, Destiny. Player expectations. It's like, hey, it's a first-person shooter MMORPG. Sure, it kind of is, mostly a first-person shooter. Where's the RPG part? Very, very lightly. And this is why it got the critical backlash. Players expected one thing, they got something else. Now I'm going to give you an example from our own game, Shards of War. This is pretty interesting here, which is player perception. So this is basically the scoreboard at the end of every match. And as you can kind of see here, the items have colors on them, so kind of white, orange, purple there. These kind of denote the power, the strength of these items. Now, the higher the color, kind of uses the World of Warcraft system, so like orange, purple, is going to be stronger than something like white or green. However, because it is a PvP game, it is a skill-based game, we didn't want to make it too much power. They're capped by level, so it's only maybe like 5% power between the lowest version and the highest version, so not very much at all. We'd find out, you could see this in the game, as soon as players entered the game, we'd match them by their MMR, basically by their player ranking. So a high-level player that has a lot of these really strong items might get matched with a low-level player with none of these strong items if they're about the same level. So you just have a guy who played a long time but was really shitty at the game, and a guy who didn't play much but was actually very good. As soon as those players would go into the game and look at the tab screen, the perception was, oh my goodness, this is such an unfair match because of these things. Even though, based on their skill level, it wasn't. It was totally fair. We took these out. We actually made it so that the matchmaking was about 20% more unbalanced. Way more unbalanced than what the current game is. Our reaction on the forums, this game got way more balanced all of a sudden because they basically saw the same colors. It's just perception, even though actually it wasn't. So this is very, very important. So this is the kind of the key talk of this, which is the everything pizza. Again, food, because I like food, sorry. So chocolate, I think most people can agree. Chocolate is a pretty decent food. You're not gonna say it's bad. It's kind of universally liked. Same thing with pizza. In general, it's pretty good. Both good foods. You put them together, just like they are, it's pretty disgusting. All right, and this is what I'm talking about. It's like just because you have two good ideas in a game, you just can't take them together and put them in the same thing. Yeah, you might get some weird food out there, kind of like sea salt caramel or like chili chocolate, but you know what? There's reasonings behind this, there's science behind this, people have done the research to figure things out. It's not just there because it's random, it's there for a reason. And the thing for us as designers is to figure out what the reason is and not just go, hey, that's good, that's good, that's good, put it together. This is when you get stuff like, it's like the world's first MMO, RPG, RTS, FPS, third-person shooter, tactical game. This is how this kind of stuff happens. Focus on what you're trying to do and really trying to figure out what is good for your game. So, for our game, an example from here is the tier system. How many of you guys have played World of Tanks? World of Tanks? World of Tanks. Yes, thank you, one guy over here. So, what the tier system for this basically is as you level up, you get new tanks. These tanks are just stronger than your previous tanks. It's just purely power increase. There's many, many different lines on here. And previously what we did on Merc Elite, which what Shards of War used to be, is like, hey, tier system is great. Let's put this together with our maps. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So I'll just break down to you why this didn't work for us. So between Merc Elite and World of Tanks. First off, because of kind of the tier level differences, you need kind of like you need more players to kind of even it out, like median wise. World of Tanks, 15 versus 15, Merc Elite, 5 versus 5. Already you have kind of 3 times the, basically you have 3 times the way to basically go and make it a little bit more median, what the average level is. Next thing is respawn versus permadeath and damage. Now this is actually very interesting. This is when you say, hey, tier system, great idea, makes a lot of money, we should use it too. Things you don't think about, but we're making kind of a top-down shooter. In World of Tanks, what you do is you have like a tier 1 tank versus a tier 3 tank. You're just stronger. You go and you damage. Your tier 1 tank does maybe 80%, 90% damage to that tier 3 tank. You die. You don't come back, but to you, that is permanent damage. You've done a good job. You've basically done a lot more than you thought you could. Other players see this. They reward you for it. They're like, man, this guy's a really good player. He managed to almost kill this tier 3 tank with a tier 1 tank. He's good. And you feel good about yourself. You're out for the game, but that damage is permanent. For us, for a top-down shooter, it's like, hey, I've come in, I've done 90% damage to a tier 3 unit, and I get killed. By the time I respawn and come back, that guy's basically healed to full health already. What have I done? You've basically negated everything that's useful about this aspect of the tier system. The next thing is static focus versus shifting utility. MOBAs are basically class-based games, so hey, a tank, like a mage, ADC, these kind of things, you have one very set focus. Whereas something like World of Tanks, hey, you can go scout, you can do many, many different things. Your tank, even if you're low level, you can be useful in many different ways. And this is something that, again, for you marketing guys, this is very important because I see this a lot, even our own studio, and this is a very, very, very good lesson for everybody, which is we had very heavy competition. MOBA space is pretty crowded. There's a couple small games out there you might have heard of, like Smite and whatnot. Something called League of Legends. I'm not sure if you've seen that one at all. Dota, small one also. But when World of Tanks came out, it was the only one of its kind. And when you guys basically go and do your market comparisons, something important to think about is this thing actually good, or is it successful just because it's the only thing out there available? Please think heavy about this, especially if it's the first one in there. This is something we did not take into account either. So, not only did that affect kind of the balance of the game, it also affected the character design. World of Tanks. So you see a couple of tanks here. With realistic kind of tanks, you don't really get too much of a difference visually. It looks like a tank. Maybe you have a bigger barrel, maybe you have 2 barrels out there, different treads, etc., etc. However, with characters, this is very, very different. So what you're seeing here is 5 different characters. They actually have different skills. We have to keep the silhouette the same, but as you tier up and rank up, people have to basically realize it's the same character. So when you're taking a look at this, all we could do is just add more bags to it. That's not very visually exciting whatsoever. It's just guy with 2 bags, guy with bags with a shoulder bag, etc., etc. So When we switched away from this, they actually gave us the freedom to do very, very diverse character designs. So I'm actually going to show you what these guys basically split off into. Now this is, keep in mind, this is 5 different characters here with different skills. As you can see, we have the ability to do basically a lot more with our creative freedom. This is where I come to. Small changes sometimes make a really, really, really big impact. Because of that, even visually, our game went from looking like this to looking like this. Much more colorful, much more dynamic. All right, so the next part of the everything pizza, as I told you, good ideas and good ideas just don't mix together, is our map design. So we're going to talk a little bit about how this basically happened in Merc Elite. So we had very deep and complex maps. Basically, this game was like a top-down battlefield. It was pitched to players as a MOBA, but really was it a MOBA? We basically made the wrong genre. So this is one of the maps from Merc Elite. If you can take a look at it, looks pretty cool. Looks like a shooter map. Looks pretty complex. Look at other shooter maps. You can compare it. Call of Duty, Halo, very similar. And then you get to Dota. You get to a MOBA. Looks completely different. And you can say, oh, this is older games. Dota 2, that design's been around forever. Then you look at newer games like Heroes of the Storm. You pretty much have the same thing when you just draw the lines in. Why is this? We weren't designing the map for the game. We're like, oh, because we can mix the map with this genre. No, that was wrong. Because we weren't making a map. It was really genre design we're trying to take 2 genres, put them together without understanding exactly what made each genre important. So we had to ask ourselves when we were evaluating this, what the core of the MOBA is at this point. It's a single map and a mode. And this is kind of thing, this is very particular, these examples are very particular to our game, but when you look at your games when you're developing, think about this, use this process, really ask yourselves, what is the core of your game? What are you actually trying to make? Is it just a map, or is it something a little bit deeper? So yes, there's a single map / mode. It's been around for over a decade. People have been working on this for a long time, since Aeon of Strife, and you've seen so many incarnations of this. There's progression in there, something we didn't have. Clear structure, clear goals and strategies. You have to go down the lane, take down towers one by one. You can't get to B without going through A. Strategic safety, if you always go backwards, you're always safe. There's constant engagement, you have PvP elements in there. Class-based combat. Now this is very important for us too. We're like, oh, we'll make a MOBA. MOBAs have classes in them. We'll put it in a shooter archetype. Domination mode, that's fine. These are clearly defined roles. But when you basically look at a shooter map out here, you can see with these domination points exactly what we did. You're like, well, hey, this works for a shooter. How come it didn't work for us? One very, very basic thing is with the class-based combat, if I'm good, I can go to one of these domination points. There's 4 dudes there, 1 grenade, they're dead. I can have a pistol. I'm just a better player than you. I can get rid of everybody, no problem. Nowhere in a MOBA, in an RPG, can you say, hey, I'm a healer, I'm a priest, I see 4 tanks over there, I'm going to take them on, I'm a better player, I'm going to win. Does not happen. Just by combining these 2 genres, we basically failed in that regard. So again, these small things do make a very, very big difference in how the game plays, just in the way that one person can be highly effective in a first-person shooter team. Yes, the same thing happens in the MOBA, but not in the same way. And in the end, we actually did a little experiment here, not on the clearly defined roles, but basically with our clear structure, the goals and strategy, and the strategic safety. So we built this map for Merc Elite. This is our desert mining site. You kind of see what it looks like there, but it's basically patterned around a MOBA map, and basically the directions you have to go, and basically how strategic safety worked. Very, very simple. Our simplest map to date, less shapes, more clear paths. We put it online, it became the favorite map of all the players out there. This was basically our test for this, and it worked. So basically going forward, this is what we turned our maps into. This is Prime Shard, this is Empire City, is what this map is. It's our first map. We just came out with a new map. This one is Meridian Gate, but as you can see, there's small differences there, because again, the small differences make the impact in the middle of the map, but basically you see the 3 clear lanes, you have to go from A to B. We changed these things, worked out very, very fine. We launched the game into our early open beta, early last year in October. We're preparing to gear up for Gamescom right now, but we've had a very successful beta. So again, if you guys want to check it out, you can take a look at Shards of War online, see what we did there. So, final point on the small changes, big impact is, again, things that people don't notice. How many of you guys played Halo? Halo? Yes, a couple guys, thank you. Call of Duty? Same guys? Same guys. Yeah, you, this guy. All right. So the thing here is, for those of you guys who actually haven't played this stuff before, you look at it, you're like, yeah, that looks about the same. I mean, there's a guy with a gun shooting another guy with a gun. Same thing. Oh no, the difference is one's in space, one's in some kind of junkyard. But the key thing here is between these games, and I'm generalizing right now, but just one thing, like in Call of Duty, it's more of kind of like a engagement time is maybe like 2 seconds. If you're lucky, you see someone, you shoot them, they're dead. It's more about kind of sneaking up on them and surprising them. Whereas in Halo, you kind of have this dance, kind of this back and forth, kind of a 6-second, maybe up to 8-second engagement time. Just that, the time that you have to engage and fight your enemy, 6 to 8 seconds, 2 seconds, maybe up to 5, totally changes the way the game plays, how you want to approach the enemy, how you play the game. And again, any shooter fan will basically tell you these are two very, very different playing, different feeling games that have their own fan bases out there. And it's because of these small changes in the mechanics. But fundamentally, you're doing the same thing. You're shooting other dudes. This is where we get to kind of innovation while preserving the core. You're like, well, you're just saying you just do the same stuff all the time. Don't go too fancy. Don't try to do too much stuff. Now, this isn't the case. So, one of the games we had at THQ China was Company of Heroes Online. You're like, okay, RTS Online, makes sense. StarCraft, you can play this online. A lot of people play this online. Okay, cool. One very big fundamental difference there was sold units. People were restricted from units. And as anybody who can play an RTS tells you, this is the core, which is basically outsmarting your opponent, knowing what they have, what you have. When you get to the point where people are actually physically missing units and you can't play against them, it breaks the core of the game. And this is the important thing. You have to preserve the core, no matter what type of game it is. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. How many of you guys have seen this? No? A couple guys. All right. Fighting game, major fighting game from Capcom. Very successful. As you know, Street Fighter 4 brought a revival in the fighting game genre previously. They made this new one. It's very good. It plays really well. It's very fun. However, again, with the core of a fighting game, it's about PvP. It's about being fair. All right. Now they have this gem system. You can kind of see it down there. These little kind of colors things here. And what that was is during the match, you could activate these things where they'd automatically activate and give you a boost in power, strength, automatically block for you, etc., etc. Now, this would not have been too bad if you could unlock them naturally, but Capcom decided you had to pay for a lot of these, especially the stronger ones, which fundamentally broke the game balance. Just this one thing. Everything else is basically the same in the game. You broke the core of kind of the fairness in the fighting game genre. Everyone just left. It's a dead game now. People are still playing Street Fighter 4. All the major tournaments are out there. This thing's only been out for a few years. It's already dead. However, at the same time, I know we ragged on Destiny before, but they did something really well here, which is they promised you the MMORPG part, didn't deliver on it, but you got the shooter thing down. That's why people are still playing this game, because the core had been preserved, which is that really tight shooter experience. And this is important. So you can fail in one area and not fail and succeed in another, but again, by hitting everything together, you can have a lot more success. I've been playing a lot of this game lately, which any of you guys seen this is Final Fantasy Record Keeper. It is, all you do here is grind, collect characters, level up your items, get more items, level up. It's just a giant grind fest. And you ask yourself, that sounds terrible. Like, why would anybody play this? And then you think about what Final Fantasy actually is, and you're like, well, yeah, I'm just grinding and collecting characters and getting more items. They really did preserve the core of the game, kind of the soul of what this series, what people liked about this series, and to me, this is a great success. Play it a little too much right now. So, what did we do in this case? We wanted to innovate on something, not go too far away. We did this on controls. As you can see over here, this is a picture of Merc Elite back when it was. It looks like a top-down shooter, but it uses mobile controls. Point and click, because it works, because it's always been like that. What did we do instead? We went with WASD. We made it a top-down shooter. It already looked like a top-down shooter. When people saw that with guns, they expected a top-down shooter. You get a lot of questions, which is like, why is this game not a top-down? I thought this game was a top-down shooter, because that's what it looked like. So we did it. It worked out very well, added a lot of new elements in there, and you say, oh, it's just a small change, but actually added a lot of strategic elements to it. Everything's a skill shot now, which is you have to aim everything. People can block bullets and tank for each other by basically standing in front. You're blocking people. There's a lot more movement. You can shoot and move at the same time. Sounds like small things, but again, like the Halo Call of Duty example, small things lead to very big changes in the metagame. And it's what people get, especially in a crowded space when you want to differentiate yourself. It's not about trying something totally new. You don't want to do the fried chicken to the cheeseburger anymore. You want to give them a different type of burger, something that's still recognizable but is delicious to them. So, final topic here, complexity for the sake of it. Is it a bad thing? Let's find out. So, this is a game called The Bureau. It's an XCOM spin-off here. And what this is basically, if you guys played XCOM, it's a top-down strategy game. All right. And they turned this into a third-person shooter. but they kept the strategy elements because they tried to preserve the core. All right, they added the complexity in there to kind of keep that kind of soul of XCOM. But what this basically means is every 3-4 seconds you have to stop and basically issue orders to your teammates. Now, for XCOM players, this isn't fun because I have to physically aim and shoot at people. It's a shooter. For shooter players, this isn't fun because the gameplay is interrupted every few seconds. They went too far in preserving the core and trying to make it complex for the sake of it being there. Did not work, and you can see this from the sales of this game. However, something else like Smash Brothers, one of my favorite games out there, it's a fighting game. A lot of people don't think so, but it really is. But what does it do? It simplifies. It's still complex, but it's not complex in the way that that drives players away. And for this one, what it is execution of moves. So this is the button combination for a super move in this is Capcom vs. SNK 2. So it's a fighting game. You have to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then a direction 10. 10 button presses to do one move. This is do the super move of this character called Geese. If you want to do a super move in Smash Brothers, what you do is, well, you get the ball and then you hold the B button down. That's it. Why is this here? Doesn't make any sense. At the end, you still want to time it correctly. The proper thing is timing. This is where the complexity comes in, is the timing of the moves, when to use them. There shouldn't be a barrier to entry in the very beginning. And this is a big problem for a lot of people because they put the complexity in the wrong part of the game. But again, after all this, you really should build for your audience. This is kind of important. Dark Souls. If you guys have played this game, this is a hard game. It is not easy by any means. Did they mess up doing this? If you take a look at how critics respond to this, how players respond to this, no, because they knew exactly what they're trying to do. They're building specifically for the audience. This is a particular type of game. They were not trying to please everybody. They were trying to please a very specific crowd. Succeeded. Gran Turismo, the same deal. For me, when I play a racing game, I want Mario Kart. I want something simple. I don't even know what happens when you like decrease tire pressure like in the back of the car, you know. It's way above my head. However, they built it specifically for this audience, for people who want to do car simulations. It's overly complex, but is it wrong? Is it wrong to be complex? No, because you're building exactly for the audience it's intended for. You get other examples here. There's a strategy game, Super Robot Tyson. Probably the worst strategy game I've seen ever. It's like no strategy in there, just a lot of fancy animations. But the same deal. People don't play this game for the strategy, they play it for the animations. Sometimes you know what you're trying to do, sometimes it gets a little weirder. You don't exactly know what your audience wants, but you hit the mark, you keep going. Goat Simulator, MMORPG, Goat Simulator DayZ, etc., etc. Finally, when all this is said and done, you really want to build smart. A quote from Henry Ford: "If I asked my customers what I wanted, they would say a faster horse." Now, this quote is always really nice to me because at the end, he's not saying do something totally new. A car and a horse really does the same thing. The goal, the focus of both these things, transportation, getting from point A to B, is the same. It's just how you do it. And it's the same thing when you're building games and you're asking yourself if you want to do something innovative. Start at the end. Start at the experience you want to give the player. Make sure they're getting exactly what they want, but then innovate in between. Again, if anybody asked, hey, let's make Lego and put it online, people will be like, that's dumb. But there you go. But you don't force innovation. All right. Last example for you here. Regenerating Health. This has been out since 1984. Came out with Baseball again in 1992. Halo had it. That's the first time. It was over almost 2 decades before this actually was really used. This is what I mean. Like, be very careful about the mechanics you take and where you want to place them. Use it for other games out there. It works fine, actually a little bit better than a lot of the classic stuff out there. When you mix genres, I mean, look at RPGs now. FIFA, any of these sports games, they're basically half an RPG now. But when you think about it, what do sports fans care about? All these fancy sports drafts, they care about stats. They care about statistics, etc., etc. RPGs, what are you caring about? Hey, it's not strength, it's like your striker power. Speed is speed, etc., etc. Again, the core is the same for both. So mixing these things together is very natural. You build on top. Be innovative where you can, but again, you gotta be innovative where it makes sense, like the sports example. Just don't put things on together because a good idea and a good idea is there. So, I'll skip this because I'm out of time, but, oh, here we go. I'll just kind of let you see. This is basically what the game looks like this day. This is an older trailer, but this is basically where Shards of War is now. As you can see, we have a lot of more unique characters. You get a lot more team play, people working together. Much more fast-paced. That's the thing, is if you look at this and you're a MOBA fan, you're like, looks like a MOBA, but again, it's those small things that makes the difference. Our bacon, that's the WASD movement, and that changes everything for people. So, I'm basically out of time here, so yep, thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm Al Yang. I'm the project lead here at Bigpoint for Shards of War. We're based in Hamburg, Germany. You can reach me at my email or my Twitter if you guys have any questions. Just find me after the talk. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this.